So if we were to look out and just see 1,000 people walk by, how many of them do you think would be believers? How many of them do you think would be Christians?
Maybe 10.
Statistically, it would be 2 to 3 out of 1,000. There are thousands and thousands of people that have never heard the gospel in a way that they could respond with faith. And there are thousands of people who are dying without knowing the good news.
What would you say to the critic out there that says, this culture doesn't need anything? They're the most advanced culture in the world, likely. They're content. They're productive. Why are you going to come in and try to change things up and add in something that isn't necessary, like the gospel?
So in Japan, there's the reality of the inner person and the outer person. And the outer person is supposed to always be content. And the outer person is supposed to always be happy. And the outer person is supposed to always be okay with the different things that are going on. And they can handle anything and nothing bothers them. They're very majime, they're very self-sufficient. They don't require anything from anyone. They're just doing their duty as part of society. There's a Confucianist foundation that underlies all of this. But the inner person might be dying. We see this happen in the States as well, but it happens in a more profound and regular way. There's a whole system for it in Japan. The way that I define a high culture or a more developed culture is when the most mundane of activities becomes a work of art. If you ever watch someone who is Japanese plant a garden or do some of these very mundane activities, it is done artfully, it's done beautifully. And so in Japan, I think you have some of the highest expressions of human culture without Christ. But the problem is that in the midst of all of the beauty, there's a brokenness that underlies it. What we pray for, though, is not for Japan to become more Western or for it to become more American, but for it to become more Christian, for the gospel to permeate Japanese culture in a way that transforms it and fulfills the beauty, and so that you see the most beautiful expressions of Japanese culture taking place in the honor of Christ. Nagoya is Japan's third largest metropolitan area. So there's Tokyo, Yokohama, there's the Kansai area with Osaka at the center, and then there's the Nagoya area. Our region is called Chubu. They are developing a new train between Nagoya and Tokyo that'll make the trip much faster than right now. So right now it's already fast on the bullet train.
Yeah.
You can go 1 hour and 40 minutes from Nagoya to Tokyo. In 2022, when the new train opens up, you'll be able to make that same trip in 45 minutes is what's estimated.
Wow.
And so what that means is it just highlights the strategic location of Nagoya for reaching this super mega region, as Japan calls it. We're smack dab in the middle of that. Like, from a Western perspective, if we were going to describe Japan, this isn't how Japan self-describes, okay?
Right.
It's important to clarify that.
Right.
But using some Western language, it's a very secular country. There's not reference to transcendence. There's not this kind of longing after spiritual things because people are trapped within these liturgies of daily life that prevent them from asking those big questions. What we have to do prior to actually sharing the gospel with someone is create space for transcendence. Just to create space for the idea of the God of the Bible to actually exist. Yeah. And that's done through things like relationships or art. Recently we held this summit with some Christian counselors in Japan, and one of the ladies has been interviewing non-Christian counselors in Tokyo before she starts a new practice. And she said that she met this one lady who was a non-Christian therapist. This non-Christian has become very interested in spiritual things suddenly because she said, when I have counseling sessions with my clients, they become so deep and so personal that it makes me feel like there must be a God. And so what happened is through the course of this deep relationship and these intimate conversations, there's this kind of opportunity for transcendence to break through. One of our missionaries on our team, he got to know this Japanese guy, and he found out that he really loved black gospel music. And this guy was like, my favorite song is Oh Happy Day. And my friend asked, like, well, what about that song is really impactful? This guy barely speaks any English. And he's singing the song, and he said, when I hear that song, I feel something. Through this artistic expression, I feel that there's something else out there. Does that make sense? There's a haunting that begins to take place in a godly way that can be transformative. Yeah. So most people that know CBI actually know it as like a place. So we're standing on the roof of CBI. And so it's a place where a lot of different ministries use our space. We have 2 different churches that use the space on Sundays. And then this houses all the ministries of CBI. Another perspective of CBI is that it's a team. And we have a multicultural team, an international team. made up of people especially from the U.S. and from Japan. Fundamentally, we're referring to a group of people who are on mission together. And then lastly, you can talk about CBI as a ministry that has ministries. And so it's an umbrella organization. Our two primary ministries are Christ Bible Seminary and the Joy of Japan Center for Church Planning and Development. And then we have several projects, including the Heart and Soul Ministry, which is an outreach ministry, and the Christian Counseling for Japan project, and CBI Press, which is a small publishing arm that we operate.
How do you define success for CBI? And if you are actually measuring it, how would you measure success?
That's a good question. For us, there's one primary thing that we're concerned about above all else, and that is the presence of a Fukuin no Seikatsu, which is a gospel lifestyle. And so the way that we're gauging success in large part is what is the kind of culture that we're developing? What's the kind of lifestyle that we're living as a team? We preach a lot about the importance of gospel-centered ministry. And we've heard of people that have this head knowledge who then move into a church context, and it doesn't actually play out in their day-to-day lives, and it's not playing out in their families or things like that. And we realize I get convicted of how I have those same inconsistencies in my life. The gospel is not just this tool for saving people who are lost, it's this tool for saving me who's here as a missionary, and we firmly believe that missions is sanctification. If that's happening, our students are immersed in that environment and they're going to catch it. It's things are caught more than they're taught, and that's going to flow into the ministries that they launch and the ministries that they serve in moving forward.
What does CBI need? Do you need money? Do you need manpower or anything else?
Yes, and yes. I mean, we need all sorts of things. If I was going to, summarize it briefly, I would say above all else, we need prayer. In order to see the Lord tear down the spiritual stronghold that Satan has developed in Japan over centuries, nothing is going to do that but prayer. The next thing that we would ask for is for people to consider going and serving in different ways. Our internship program, we have everything from a 2-month summer internship to a 1 or 2 year version of that internship. And then the last thing is to give. The reality is Japan's an unreached people group, and so even though it's a wealthy country, the church is very poor. The Japanese staff that we have who serve with us, they're all involved in other kinds of ministry besides CBI as well. Okay. They might be married to a church planner, or they might be leading women's Bible studies in their church. The giving that goes doesn't just support CBI's ministry, but it spreads out and supports ministries across Japan.
That's great. Awesome. That's a wrap.
Cool.